Good evening, good evening, everybody. Welcome back.
Good evening. Hello, Brimfield. So tonight we've got kind of an abridged discussion on what happened at the meeting. Not a whole lot happened, so that should be quick. And then we've got a surprise guest and a surprise announcement. So hopefully you'll stay tuned in. But I guess the first thing to discuss from the last meeting was the I'd like to start off, I should say, with the inventory by the police department, which is kind of an interesting thing. Obviously we've got the chief leaving, and they want to know what's there. The weird part about what they did was they had the chief compile the inventory, and nobody was assisting him.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but if I want an inventory,
right,
because somebody, could potentially, not be doing the correct thing, probably wouldn't want that person doing the inventory.
Right. No, for sure. I mean, I think it was interesting. It's just, if you're really doing a quality or a quantity assessment of everything that is owned by the town, I would think that you would probably have checks and balances, have somebody else kind of go over things with you as well, and maybe stipulate what you're looking for. I mean, it got a little silly when they were talking about number of bullets in a case and
how many badges.
Yeah, how many badges there were. Badges, we don't need no stinking badges. Remember that? I'm dating myself from Blazing Saddles, but yeah, so I thought it was kind of odd, and that they would be even asking for it. But I guess they want to give the new chief, a piece of paper that says, "Hey, this is what you had to start with." I'm not sure where it was from.
Yeah. So, and I guess even before we go to the police thing, I just want to point out that once again, for every meeting this year, there was it was submitted on September 22nd at 3:45. That was the Thursday when it's supposed to be. But then it was revised. September 22nd at 3:45. Then it was revised on the Friday at September 23rd at 3:23. And then they slept on it over the weekend and revised it on Monday at 1:13, 1:41, and 1:44.
Right. Yeah, I don't understand the, and I guess I'm not saying it's illegal, but honestly, on every board that I've ever heard, and when Mr. Sullivan was clerk, we were always told, and by the way, I think we're live on BrimfieldMatters.com on Facebook.
Well, no, not that.
I mean, I'm sorry, on Brimfield Matters on Facebook Live. So we're trying out a little something here. But we've always been told that you've got to post 48 hours before the meeting, business days, and that was it. I mean, it went up there just because of the way Friday was not considered a business day. It was always Thursday afternoon,
right,
counted Friday, and then Monday, and then you had the meeting on Monday for the select board, of course. The idea that you would change it just never happened. I mean, it honestly didn't happen unless there was an emergency that mandated it. If there was something that didn't come up that was totally unforeseen, like an emergency, that would be added or adjusted on the agenda. I've never heard of just the agenda items being added and removed kind of willy-nilly just because. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And Mr. Kelly likes to say that all these open meeting violation things that we submit don't amount to anything ever. Well, that's not true at all. And this one is an easy one. The open meeting law states exactly what Paul said: 48 hours notice, unless it's an unforeseen issue. The reality is George Adams, for the past month plus 2 or 3 meetings has been saying that the building committee is going to be a standing item on the agenda.
Right. Right.
For the past 2 meetings, it hasn't gone on until Monday, afternoon.
Right.
So instead of the 48 hours that should be a standing agenda item, they're giving the building committee 4 hours.
I think honestly, if you really look at that building committee when Mr. Adams was there and he was basically reiterating the need to communicate, there was an affirmation that, the building committee would be on the agenda and is always should be a standing agenda item, just as was said. The other thing that actually went a little bit beyond that was the fact that they had decided to have a dual meeting. So a meeting of the building committee and a meeting of the select board, so that they could talk basically during the same meeting. All members have an equal meeting at the exact same time. And so that needed to be posted by the building committee 48 hours, because that's what they were going to do. So they never even had the opportunity to do that because they never got confirmation that it was going to be on the agenda. I think one thing that this really does underscore is the fact that even a select board member who promises they want to get an agenda item on the next agenda can't get it on the next agenda. I just don't understand why that is. It's never been a problem in previous years other than the last one. It's been ridiculous that a select board member doesn't get, they should get the nod that your agenda item is going to be on there for you to discuss.
End of story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. I got to pull the agenda up.
They got on this other one too, just
Yeah.
bigger.
Oh, and the other big one was a personnel policy. That is such a farce that nobody knew or didn't at least admit that it was there. Ms. Collins was on the board that voted for it. She was very adamant that she wanted a mission statement, and she had some other issues that we tried to address as much as we could.
Right.
But at the end of it, every employee, including all the select board, all the board members, signed a document saying that they saw it, including Ms. Collins.
Right.
If the board of selectmen looked or the select board looked in their files, they would find Ms. Collins' signature saying, "I saw it." And now, less than 2 years later, she's saying she's never seen it. It doesn't exist.
Right. No. Yeah. And I thought it was interesting because several of the employees that were on hand at the meeting even said they had it on their phone. They had it on their desk. They had it readily available because they've been using it. And so that was a little bit, I didn't understand that. I think what it underscores again is the communication or lack thereof between the member amongst the members of the board, not even just with us, but with themselves. And so I think that really is a big issue. Unfortunately, that's a big issue.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're going kind of fast through this. If anybody has any questions or comments, someone on here posted that the PVPC was notified that they would have to come back. That was another sad part of this, which was the Age Friendly and Disability Commission. They wanted to discuss it. They sent an email talking about what they wanted. And I don't know if it was malicious intent or what, that it was put on the agenda incorrectly. And I don't know who would have done it.
It didn't sound that way. I mean, Mr. Adams specifically said that he had talked about it and that the email or the conversation that he forwarded to have on the agenda, just as the way I got it, just as it was written, meaning discussion with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, with the representative thereof. And so why it got transitioned into the word grant on the agenda, I don't know. I mean, it may be that most of the interactions between the town and the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission are grants, and that's just kind of what really the nature of the beast. But to say, because that word says grant, we're not talking about grants, we can't talk about it, ludicrous. It was absolutely insulting to the, and I didn't get her name, the representative of the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, absolutely insulting to them. And it was disrespectful to the disability group as well. Just because they were on there, they did everything right, and then they get stymied because of a technicality that was on really was the problem with the board. It was the
Right.
boards. They can communicate. They made a little bit of a glitch, and they couldn't rectify it right there and just say, you know what, we understand the nuances and the intent of this meeting, and we should just move on and talk about what they need to talk about. Because it's ridiculous. I say ridiculous so many times in these videos, but it just doesn't even make sense. Adults should be able to say, okay, Grant, PVC, Pine Valley Planning Commission, and the town, they're kind of commingled, and that's what you're talking about. No matter what you talk about with that triad, that group, it's always about a grant and money,
Right.
trying to get the town to get something.
Yeah, it wasn't specifically or a specific grant,
No,
possibly, but yeah, they wanted to come in and talk about grants, which was what the agenda item said, and they should have been able to do it. The woman who was there had driven over an hour to get there, only
Right.
to be turned away without, being given the courtesy to say even her name. So
right.
that was
Yeah,
pathetic.
I thought that was not good.
And we are running through.
There were
things
some
quickly.
basic things, the right of first refusal for Page Hill. I mean, the reality is the town doesn't have extra money to buy land that's coming out of Chapter 61 or 61A. And so it would have to be something that would be really, really good, really
Nice flat in the center of town.
It's
would
functional,
be-
functional. And I think that, so most of the time when people see right of first refusal on there, just to make it clear, it's gone through other committees already. It's
Right.
gone through from the assessor's office. It's gone through planning. It's gone to conservation. It's
And the assessors.
Yeah, and I saw it. Yep. And then it finally gets to Board of Selectmen, basically as the last board. And the reality is, it's usually a no-brainer. You can kind of go by what other people are thinking, and then it's just a sign off. Basically, it's the sign off.
Right.
That the town just is not in the capacity or has no desire to actually come in and buy that land.
Right. And not every piece of land requires, the town's right of first refusal, obviously, if
Mhm.
anybody's bought or sold land. The only time that the town has opportunity to do so would be if it's in chapter land, if it's agricultural use, if it's a wood, a forestry activity, something to that effect. The town has the right of first refusal on those pieces of property before they get sold as, and they can sell those if it stays within the use. So if I, as a farmer, buy Paul's farmland that's in agricultural land, we can do that, and there's no right of first refusal on the town. But if I, as a developer, want to buy Paul's farmland,
Right.
now that triggers, I have to pay back taxes, and it comes out of chapter land. And in that process, you're allowed to, or the town's allowed to say, hold off on that. I'll match that price, and we'll buy it. So that's the process that it has to go through. And obviously there wasn't a whole lot of good municipal use up on Page Hill.
Right.
So
that was just really a matter of clerical adjustments.
So
let's see what else.
the ARPA consulting.
Oh,
I have to hit that one real quick, just because,
yeah.
Once again, this really, my father's favorite saying when I became a consultant was that the only reason you hire a consultant is to tell you what time it is using your own watch. So here you go.
Yeah, there you go.
So, and
that's
that's really what this was.
Right.
We hired this woman to go to a meeting that the meeting basically said, these are the rules you have to go through. And now there's two boards that will oversee the ARPA funds, and one board will be there before you purchase anything. So the CARES Act we had difficulty with because we had to buy it and then look for the reimbursement.
Right.
And if they didn't think that it was good for COVID funds,
Mm-hmm.
they could reject those funds.
Right.
Which is why we were very conservative, because we didn't want to have the town on the hook.
Right.
Now they've got a committee, which is the way it should be, before you purchase anything, that will say, this is good, you can buy it. Why do we need a consultant now?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe the consultant is going to say, use the funds for this, But if you don't know what you're trying to use the funds for, they shouldn't know what you're trying to use the funds for. I mean, they don't know this town. They don't know the needs of the town. They haven't been sitting in that town hall for the last, whatever, days, months, years, whatever you want to say. So they wouldn't necessarily know the nuances of what this town desires or needs. I mean, they can have all the experience they want in Springfield and the projects and things that can get funded. Yeah, that's all well and good. The reality is, this is just not Springfield. And I think that makes it hard for a consultant at that capacity to be able to kind of bring it down to what a smaller town like Brimfield can use. Well, and the other thing too is you buy a lot of things, whether it's infrastructure or hardware or IT or whatnot, you got to maintain it. You got to take care of it. And if like those computers that we got through on the last CARES Act, that I didn't think was a great idea. We got like, I don't know how many, 28. So it's like $38,000 plus of IT that will all become obsolete in the same time, so they've all got to be replaced because the operating hardware doesn't last forever. The operating systems don't last forever. They need to be upgraded on the way down. So all of a sudden it's going to be a little bit more of a burden longer term if you don't have a real strategy of how to use it and then how to plan, whether it's some sort of an IT budgetary plan, so a capital plan for the future, so going forward. So, but yeah, I don't know what the ARPA. Well, I don't know. But the good thing is, it's going to be paid out of the ARPA funds. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
To me, that just seems okay. Yeah, it's not free money. We probably justified spending it because bigger towns and communities can have these consultants because it makes sense. And now the money that we get, we're giving some away just to be told that we need to go through these committee channels to make sure that it's authorized. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So I just got my emergency text.
Uh-oh.
Sorry, I thought I had turned this off. About the ARPA funds, again, are funds that came through the feds for COVID relief and kind of economic recovery. We got approximately $1.2 million from that. And they have chosen to give up to 1% of that to this consultant, I believe. Was it 1%?
It was an hourly. I want to say it was an hourly, and then it may be based on the total at the end.
Yeah.
And they were thinking that percentage was really low, comparatively speaking, consultant work. I mean, it usually is. But this, again, it just doesn't make sense. Good. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that it's needed and the effort is there. But I thought it was an hourly rate first.
Yeah. It's hourly rate. It's time and material.
It's like 65 an hour and then a
with
percentage
a not
at
to
the
exceed.
end. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'll have to go back and look at that.
But
footage.
Again, all that this consultant is doing is, telling us to go ahead or not on projects that the town needs without her knowing anything about the town and what our needs are.
Right.
And then reporting on it, which is a lot of work. But when we had the CARES Act, it was a lot of work. And, the board that, they like to admonish as spend happy, Paul did that and worked with the accountant and the treasurer collector and got them all done.
Yeah.
Within the town's, budget. Paul didn't charge any money for that. No. And it was a lot of work, but we got it done. And the same thing could have happened, especially because the ARPA funds aren't for 28 computers and, a CPR machine
for the fire department,
a bunch of hand sanitizer,
PPE for everybody, that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, 100% true. I think that we were under the gun. There was an emergency. It was a very different era. But and the biggest thing too is we really weren't sure whether we were going to get the money back. And we had some things that were refused. I mean, some things that were very justifiable were refused. We had on the last one, they had removed it, I think, before it went in for they're trying to get an HVAC system and a 200+ year old building. and try to get it all in by December 31st. And again, they were packing that CARES Act at the end of that year, which was ridiculous.
And it's HVAC. HVAC is one thing.
Right.
What they had suggested were mini splits,
Right.
which,
in all the buildings,
for ARPA, my whole contention and why I didn't want to go forward with that was really that that an HVAC would bring in fresh air and, allow you to hopefully exhaust bad COVID-ridden air,
right,
if it existed. Whereas the mini splits work in a building and they're ductless, meaning they recirculate the same air over and over again.
right.
So I read studies. I mean, to formulate my opinion wasn't just this is dumb. I read studies where it was saying that you're 18% more likely to get COVID with
Right.
recirculated air than fresh air.
Right.
And stuff like that.
And I think there had been a couple of articles here and there looking at the HEPA filter that is actually in the unit as being the qualifier for that. I agree. I mean, I did the research and I thought it was dumb and I thought it was untenable. One of the stipulations was that everything that was procured at the end of that October
Yes.
request needed to be in place by December 31st of 2021. Well, it just couldn't happen. There's no way you were going to get a construction job of that magnitude affecting I think it was
buildings,
at least the
yeah.
3 buildings. I mean, the library annex and the hall, I think were all involved. You weren't going to get that done by, well, one, you couldn't get the product. There's just no, I ordered mini splits for our business and it took literally months to get them in. And you're never going to get construction done in December by the end
Right.
of that year. So to me, it was like, why put it on there if there's absolutely no way it was justified or even possible to do,
Right.
even if you could justify it.
And it was something that, Paul was signing his name. I think I had to sign a couple of them too.
On this one, I acted. On this one, I backed off. I wrote it.
Yeah.
I submitted it. The chair was the person that was in charge, and I was doing what the board voted. To be very clear, and I definitely had apprehensions about it, but the board voted it, and so yeah. The other ones I had my name on it.
So unless there's something else pressing, I think it's time to unveil the secret guest.
We gonna have a secret guest every.
We do have the open meeting law.
Yeah, we could do that. So
Since it involved.
So it's
We're the open meeting
interesting.
law guys.
It's interesting when there's an open meeting law violation. So what happens is that you put it in, and then they've got to the board has to respond to you in a certain way to kind of either give you satisfaction that you were listened to, or at least discuss it, and then do it formally in writing as a following to follow that up. So twice this particular issue was brought up at two sequential meetings, and it was brought up with the phrase that was used was, these are inconsequential, or these are a waste of time and a waste of the town's money. All right, I'm going to say that I totally disagree with that. This is a right of every American in this kind of government. And I have a problem, and I didn't get to discuss what the open meeting law violation was.
And that's important because it does say that there should be a discussion about these open meeting law in the open meeting law violation and the law itself.
Right.
It talks about how the process goes, and part of that is discussion.
Right. I mean, I had a problem with some of the discussion that went along with, I think it was, going back to the August 29th meeting, I think it was, or late August meeting, when they were talking to the police chief about one thing, and they were bringing up other things that had nothing to do with it, and that had some insinuations that I thought were inappropriate. And you can go back and look at these meetings because they're filmed. And that was my problem. And they kept on doing it. It almost sounded threatening. Do you want to talk about this? Do you want to talk about that? We're going to talk about it. And it sounded to me, it insinuated a nefarious undertone, to be honest. I just didn't like it. And so I didn't think it was appropriate, and I wrote it. And the reality was, they didn't just get a letter back from town council that said, "Hey, this has no merit. Just discuss it and push, and it'll be nothing." They actually asked for an extension to talk about it, to write something up and discuss it more. Now, I've not gotten a rebuttal, a written reply yet.
And I'm guessing it got boosted from the select board that usually does a discussion among themselves.
Right.
And they couldn't figure it out. They didn't know how to respond. So they pushed it up to the attorneys.
Which I think is a good thing. In this particular one, it was a smart thing to do.
They should have. And it took the attorneys more time than they thought because, whether it's right or wrong, it's skirting that line very closely.
Right. Yeah.
And I would be surprised if the 3-page letter documented that they say they got from the town council said, he was wrong. There's no merit in this.
Right. And so I obviously nobody has a chance to discuss at these meetings because nobody has a chance to get up to the microphone. And really there was no offer to discuss it. It was just more of trying to insinuate that it was a waste of time. And it's not a waste of time. It is checks and balances. I think they were wrong. And if I'm proven that they were not wrong, then fine. If it's on the line, then they need to change and they need to make it so that it's not on the line. Right. And if they were wrong, then they really need to own up to it and say that, okay, they were wrong. They went over it a little bit. I still think that it's up to them to act like adults, and it's up to them not to do these things. They shouldn't. Yeah. That conversation never should have happened the way it happened. Right. And so anyhow, so we'll see what happens with that. I'll keep you posted.
And on mine that is now at the Attorney General, I had one that was dismissed at a couple meetings ago. Mm-hmm. That's now I've pushed it forward because I do think it's wrong, which was, there has been no public access, no public discussion on any matter since this new chair has taken his seat.
Right.
I thought it was interesting that, they may come back and say that the chair has every right to do so. But the fact that I actually got to talk last meeting, which was, groundbreaking in itself.
I have to say, I was surprised.
Yeah, I was too. I think that also helps. Having these open meeting violations come up, something changed. He allowed a bit of discussion. It was very caged and very, I had to be careful what I said so I didn't, get kicked out.
Right.
But, it was a start.
It was a step in the right direction. The microphone get turned on. I mean, even see that microphone there to see if he used it was good. I thought that was a really good step in the right direction.
Yep. All right. So
well, maybe we should talk about what's happening on Saturday. Talk ahead of time. So, everybody that's been following along knows that, or you should know, hopefully, that there is an election this Saturday. And it starts at 12:01, 12 to 8. And it is not at the hall. It's not at the school, which one would think it should be at. It's at the safety complex, which I'm not exactly sure why they did it there. But that's where it's being held. And so that was up to them. So that is the election to fill the seat that was vacated by Mr. Leamy. So after he resigned, retired, whatever, as of June 30th. So that opens that up. And so there was an election on Saturday. So I wanted to do that little preamble.
Yeah. Okay. So as of now, there is one person running. A person that it's been amazing to me that I've asked a bunch of people about this person and nobody that I have talked to, and I've talked to townies, I've talked to, octogenarians, I've talked to young people, I've talked to, every demographic in Brimfield I've talked to. Nobody seems to know this guy. Right. He's a long-term resident. He supposedly was on finance committee at some point. When I was on, I never heard his name. And
Alan Bukovici, I think it is.
Yeah. But it's amazing that he's popped out of somewhere and he wants to run, and he's the only person. So so now we actually have the privilege to say that there's going to be a write-in campaign, and I'm going to get out of the way so she can take center seat. You'll be in the hot seat.
Okay.
So
In the hot seat.
for those that don't know, this is Crystal Harry, and Crystal has been active quite a bit in select board meetings. Her husband is on the disability commission, and they've been around for the past couple of years, active.
Yes. Watching, listening.
Yeah, and has been very helpful. So we want to introduce her. And do you want to say anything?
Just I'm here as the write-in candidate, hopefully to get your vote. My biggest thing is I think we have a right as citizens to have a board that is willing to listen to us and hear us. And I just don't think that that's happening right now, and it hasn't been happening. So that's my biggest thing. I think we have that right as citizens, and I want to see that happen. So I wanted to take some sort of action. And as many of you know, I've been outspoken at many meetings, which, yes, I have been outspoken at many meetings, which has caused many waves, I'm sure. But I think it's very different being a townsperson trying to be heard when you're not being listened to. Trying to get your voice heard, sometimes you have to speak louder than maybe you typically would, because you don't have that ability to
Especially
be heard.
with the two boards that have you've been
Yes.
active with.
Yes.
Right.
And there's been no shortage of me trying to speak out, as well as my husband too.
Right.
So
I think it is important. The participation, I think, seems to be the backbone of a lot of our discussions and quite honestly our problems with a lot of what's happened in the last 18 months or so. And honestly, I think it's even being seen by the board members. So
Yeah.
this may be a loaded question, but if you were elected to this board, do you think that you would be privy to the information and participate as an equal?
honestly, no, I don't think that I would be. I don't think that it's happening now, even with the 4 members that are on. I think we see people in the meetings that have information and people that don't have information.
Yeah.
And that's clear in the meetings. I think it would be more seeking out the information before meetings, making sure that I have the most up-to-date agenda, since they've been updating 3 or 4 times on Mondays before the meetings start.
Right.
That would be more of a proactive thing that I would have to do or attempt to do, depending on how much they would block someone out or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking from experience,
Right.
they block you out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's very frustrating. And so I guess maybe as a follow-up question, how would you deal with the frustration? I mean, are you going to? I mean, because there is a certain decorum that needs to be kept,
Yes.
and there is a way. There are ways that you behave. What should behave? All right,
Should be.
as a member of
Yes.
a select board, would you be able to deal with that frustration? Quite honestly.
Honestly, I think I would. I've dealt with a lot of frustration, and dealing with a lot of different teams. I think a lot of it stems from serving in the military. You just learn, no matter what team you're on, you have to learn how to function on the team. And that comes with a lot of frustration at times because you don't always get the perfect team.
Right.
Yeah. So I would actually like to expand on that. So I've got to know you. You applied to be the emergency management director.
I did.
Which was, and I learned a lot about you and your history, and I think you would be a great asset, both as emergency management and the town, just in general. And it brings a nice piece that I think we're lacking. And Sean Connors is a good emergency management director. I don't mean to talk bad about him at all, but being on the select board, having the emergency management experience you have, I think would be
Can only help.
valuable.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but I know that, and Paul was also on the committee.
Mhm.
Yes, the interview committee.
Yes.
Yeah. That was a learning curve. It was
Yes.
a learning experience.
Yeah.
Yes. I think,
And I do
yeah.
believe, I'm sorry, I do believe Sean's great. I mean, I
Yeah.
think he's got,
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
he's extremely qualified, and his willingness to work with you and others, I think was absolutely great,
Yeah.
and is critical, to be honest.
Yes.
You look what's going on in Florida.
There's a lot happening.
There's just a lot happening, and it can happen here just at any time. So I do think that you bring a lot of stability and that interaction and understandability between the board and those kind of situations. I think that would be great,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. I think that would.
We have a bunch of plastic police chief people, plastic badges type people on the board right now.
Oh,
Oh,
geez.
But
Ouch.
Ow.
All right.
they got their cat gun.
But I think what are ways that you think that you could interact and how would you convince them to allow your participation? And what do you think that you could do to kind of gain them over?
Yeah, to gain them over. That's hard. I think it would be some candid conversations, honestly, to say, hey, this is what it is. I think we should remove any personal feelings that you may have out of it, because this has nothing to do with how you personally feel about a person. This is about more. This is about the town and what we can do for the town as a group. It's not about, oh, I don't like the way this person does this. I don't like the way this person does that. That's a personal bias that you're bringing to the table. And I think that a lot of that just needs to be removed. And I think that bringing, I don't want to say, tact, professional tact, and some management skills are important. I think as a member of the board, you're a customer service representative, essentially, for everyone that's on the board, your customer service. Your customers are the townspeople, and the townspeople are going to come to you and they're going to say things that you don't always like. And that shouldn't be taken personally. And it shouldn't be, oh, now I'm going to personally attack that person because I feel personally attacked. It should be leveled out. And I think that that's an important part of it. It's just, we need to communicate and we need to take our personal feelings to the side and just move on.
Yeah.
Do you think that your military experience, especially in that regard, has better prepared you for this kind of a situation?
I think military experience always prepares you with dealing with different types of people. No matter where you serve or what you do in the military, what level you're at in the military, you always have to learn how to work with people because you don't have a choice. Those are the people that are on your team, and those are the people that you need to work with. So it's just about getting it done.
So I got a question, but before I do, I want to say this a couple of times, and so it's important so that everybody who's listening, if you take off or whatever, that with a write-in candidate, you need to write in Crystal Harry.
Yes.
And address, and East Hill Road is fine. So I give your number out.
Yep. It's 212 East Hill Road. And then you'll see it when on the ballot, there's the person that's already on the ballot and their name and address will be there. So the same thing needs to go on the write-in. So my name and address right below that on the write-in line. And
it's going to be very important to make sure that you fill it out correctly.
Right.
So it's Crystal Harry, 212 East Hill Road.
Right. Now we've done a little bit of research, just background, because I wasn't sure how the write-in thing worked. And quite honestly, the Secretary of State, their rules do say, try to get it as exact as you can. It is out to the registrars to determine intent. If they think that the intent is close enough and it looks like it's legit, then they're supposed to count it. I wouldn't take any chances. Write it the way it's written. If that's what you want to do, no matter what write-in, Mickey Mouse. I don't care what write-in you do.
I do.
Write it.
Yes.
Write it
Yeah.
correctly. Write it correctly.
Yeah. So
And legibly.
yes, and legibility is also another
Yes.
key thing. So what is your military career? How long were you in the military?
I was in for 18 years and served. I was active duty for 4 years.
In what branch?
Air Force, all Air Force. So I was active duty for 4 years. After that, I got out and went back into the reserve and served the rest of my time in the reserve. I did command and control, which is emergency management and command and control combined. I did education and training, and I did the inspector general. So I worked on looking at programs, how to make programs better, what's working in a program, what's not working in a program. Another time when you have to deal with people that don't want to see your face all the time.
Right. When you want to shake up
Yeah,
things a little
yeah.
bit. So, this isn't working. It's like, it's
Yeah.
been working for 10 years. Why
Yeah.
don't you shake it up?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So,
there's a lot of that in town.
yeah. And that's one of my work. I just like that saying is, well, it's always been this way, so it should stay this way, and it's
Right.
working.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that drives me crazy because there's always room for improvement.
Okay.
Yeah. So with the inspector general, is that looking at violations? That-
So
I don't even
yes
know.
and no.
Yeah.
It's more looking at programs and seeing how they're
Okay.
abiding by the regulations and making sure that they're abiding by it. And then we find things that
Okay.
Aren't-
Internal regulations?
yeah,
Is that-
internal regulations, yeah, and external regulations too.
Okay.
Which
Okay.
I do think is very important for
Yes.
select board, and I think translates very well.
Actually, it does, yeah.
I know how to dig into a regulation.
Dang.
That's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there was
Yeah.
a lot. Yeah, there was a lot of looking at programs and seeing, and even in my previous career field, I was doing that too because I was at the superintendent level. So I had to look at programs all across the base to make sure they were working correctly and what
Nice.
could be improved.
Okay.
Also, Greenbelt, that was fun. I did Greenbelt process improvement, which is for you civilian people may know lean process
yeah.
improvement or Six Sigma. The Air Force has kind of translated that over and combined them a little bit to be a Greenbelt certification. So, and they use, it's a combination really of lean and Six Sigma. It's not one or the other.
Okay. So with that, how would that translate over? For me, I'm kind of thinking like the standard protocols for vacation time, which
Yes,
seems to be a sticking point with this board.
Yes.
You could help develop
a process. Like, what is the current process? What is broken in the current process? What makes one person feel like it's not working? What makes another person feel like it's not working? And again, that takes a lot of coming together
Right.
and working together. So if
And you've done that kind of team building?
yes, well, we call them events, but yes. Yeah.
No, that's good. I think, honestly, I do think that, and there's some justification of paperwork and people on their honor and
Mhm.
things like that. When you have a small rural community, when everybody was in the annex, say, and somebody was taking vacation, you knew it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and it's hard to break or get new habits. But as you expand and as you have technology and as you have just going into this 21st century, you're going to have there's just a lot more accountability. And I think that's probably right. Just how you get people to come on board
Yeah, and I
is
think-
different than just saying you guys are all
Yes.
totally unaccountable.
Right. And that's a big part of the process improvement is bringing people together and having them work towards the solution together instead of alienating people or
Right.
making them feel like they're attacked for how things are going right now. It's looking at how things are going and bringing people together and asking what their opinions are
Right.
instead of pushing them.
Sure.
away.
Yeah. Because
Oh.
it makes it look like
You try to bring them together, not push them away?
Yes,
Mhm.
that is the key. Even if you
Huh.
don't agree with them.
Right.
Wow.
I mean, because it's not their fault. They've been doing the same thing for this
No.
many years. It's just that's the way it's been.
Yeah.
And so maybe sometimes it just needs to be shaken up a bit.
Yeah.
But with a pat on the back and
I don't-
a hug rather than
Yes.
than a,
But I don't-
than a
Yeah,
stick.
and I mean, with the intent going in that these people aren't doing anything malicious.
Right.
It's just the way things have been and the way the process has been. So
Right.
it's not on the people, it's on the process.
Yep. Is there a question there?
I can't see. How do you even see that?
I have to
See?
I've got to put my spectacles on because my age shows is like, dang. We're gonna need some. We need some more infrastructure here. Some big words up there.
I can't see far, so I can't. There's no help here.
I can see it, but then I end up doing this, and so it doesn't help. So what we need somebody to give it to us on a bigger screen. So some high school IT person back there.
Yeah.
We'll get there. We're getting there.
I got a new question in my ear.
Yeah, right. This just in. So, do you have any points that maybe have been on some agenda as of late?
And actually, I think it would be better.
Oh no.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Instead of asking her what she thinks about things, I think we should hit a couple of hot topics and see how she responds to them.
Oh jeez.
Oh, nice.
Yeah?
All right.
Wow.
Right.
This is action TV.
This is.
Can we get the lighting?
Get it going. Yeah.
Lighting's already here, guys.
I'm trying to block it a little bit because there's a reflection back there. I'm trying to. All right.
So, I guess in my eyes, one of the big items is the senior center.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, senior center, town hall.
Mm-hmm.
Right to it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Obviously a hot button topic.
It is.
So you want to hear my take on it?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I feel like there's been a lot of work done already on this based on what I've seen at meetings. I don't have privy to all the behind the scenes stuff that you guys have seen and that the employees of the town have seen. But I feel like we've had feasibility studies, we've had other studies done. And there's just been a lot of legwork done to try and come up with these possible solutions for the senior center, but it seems like they're being ignored or not paid enough attention to, I guess. So really taking a hard look at what we have right now, like what are those feasibility study results? I feel like they were rushed at the one meeting that they were presented.
The senior center study.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like those results were very rushed through. Maybe not the fault of the presenter, but it just felt very pushed through and not paid attention to, and they weren't ready to discuss it, even though I think it had been presented before that as well.
All that information.
Yes.
Yeah.
So to me, I feel like we have a lot of possibilities that we should be looking at and presenting to the town before we start thinking about bringing something else in, like buying another building. Buying another private residence to solve the senior center problem is just creating more issues in the long run. And I think I can't help but think of the annex, like all of the issues we have with the annex right now and maintaining the annex, and it's falling apart, and it's because it's an old house.
Yeah,
like
it is.
So now we're going to buy another house, and are we going to be in the same place, 10 years, 5 years down the road where we are having to do all these things to this house? That's not something that we've tailored to our own senior center. Now we've done all this work on this house and things are falling apart on the house. There's a pool to maintain, I guess. And, so that to me seems like we're adding more to a problem rather than looking at the possible solutions that we have already in our pocket that people have spent a lot of time on. So I hate to say that I've never even thought of it that way. And it sounds kind of cheap on YouTube, but like just to say, let's push the things through that have already been, boiling for a couple of years that multiple departments have looked at or boards have looked at before we put something else on. That's okay. We don't, I mean, in reality, we don't know if the town's going to agree with a possibility that we have already.
No.
Yeah.
We're taking that ability to choose away from them by not presenting it to them accurately.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the, and it's a frustration as well, because you could have as much planning and as like, this seems like talk to the building committee. They've got the best plan. This is going to be great. And you got to wait till town meeting. And then it's do or die at town meeting. And then it either goes or it doesn't, for good or for bad. And then at that point, you're kind of stuck for another year if it doesn't go, and you got to be more creative.
And that's one of the things that sticks with me too, is I feel like we could publicize it more than we do. You know, put the results on the website. Let us all see the results. Put it up somewhere.
Right.
That way people can review these results ahead of time and start giving feedback at meetings.
Agree.
If you have a running item on the agenda for the senior center, people can now come and ask questions that they have based on the information that they've reviewed. If you openly give them that information and have it easily accessible for them.
I think that'd be a great idea. You know, that should be a standing, I mean, the senior center, the annex, like build town building, that should be a running agenda item, because you're right. Every week something comes up, whether it says no heat, or whether there's vermin in the basement, or there's water, or anything. I mean, it should be a standing meeting, right?
And that way, now you're hearing from the people, you know, kind of, you can gauge their temperature and where they're standing on it. And obviously you won't hear from everybody, because we know not everybody comes and participates at the meetings, but I feel like the more we open it up to people, the more apt they're going to be to come in. It's right now, it feels very closed off. Even at meetings, when you walk in, it just feels closed off when you walk into the meetings.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
yeah, it's like you're a voyeur to, you know, I don't know, like an aquarium or whatever.
And I know it's their meeting, it's the Board of Selectmen meeting, but again, the Board of Selectmen is a customer service entity. They're there to represent the town,
right,
and hear from their constituents. That's why we voted them in.
Right. We're a small enough town where this should be standard.
Easy, right?
It should be a standard.
It shouldn't be based on, I don't want to hear what people have to say, so I'm not going to listen.
Well, it's interesting. I actually had a graphic that we were going to set up, but I didn't.
No,
It
it's my
matter.
fault. There was a glitch in the streaming, and it would have been on a different channel, different episode. So we went back to the old school. But next time, it'll be out.
But this has always been, I wanted to look at this, and I finally did. And it was the definition of community. And, because community matters was a big thing at the last election. And it always struck me, like, the name of our show is Brimfield Matters, which to me, every person in Brimfield matters to us. And I think Paul and I, when we were on the board, tried to make every community member, every Brimfield resident matter, and everybody who was interested in Brimfield. Community matters is a great saying, but the definition of community from Citizenship in the Community Merit Badge book, which certain
that's from.
Gotta be a Boy Scout.
Yeah.
I have nothing.
Nope. It's been a while since I was there.
I was never a Boy Scout.
So it's community is defined as pretty much anything from a family to a church, to a group, to a neighborhood, to a town, or to the U.S., to a country. So saying community matters is a great saying, but if that community is
the Board of Selectmen,
a very small group,
right?
And from what I have seen from the Board of Selectmen, it's whoever voted for me, I'm gonna represent. And they've pounded their chest a couple of times saying,
right,
we got 400 votes, and none of them want the senior center. Well, that doesn't mean the town doesn't want it. The town is 3,700 people.
Right.
400 people voted for you, and that's still a very small, just over 10%. Right.
And sometimes it doesn't mean that it's the best thing to do. Even if a certain group wants it, sometimes you got to look outside of that and say, all right, am I doing the best thing? Whether it's the senior center, or whether it's ARPA funds for water, or not going on with a project, or disbanding the building committee. What's the common good? And that's where I think you're right. I think Brimfield matters, and I think the whole town needs to take a look at what's going on. I mean, they need to become active.
And again, I'm going to push it here now. The write-in candidate that I think represents Brimfield, and Brimfield matters to Crystal, is Crystal Harry from 212 East Hill Road.
Right.
Hey.
So,
I wouldn't mind inviting Mr. Berkovich.
I haven't seen anything
Hey,
posted or talked about.
there
at all.
hasn't been a thing about him.
So I don't know if anybody knows him. And well, I'm sure there's going to be somebody on Facebook that will maybe see this. And if he would contact
YouTube.
us or YouTube, but I'm thinking Facebook might be
Yeah,
a legitimate
forgot we had two going.
connection. If we can get him to send us an email at brimfieldmatters@gmail.com, we can. I'd be more than happy to try to get another episode even tomorrow night. I mean, I could fit tomorrow night. I mean,
Yeah.
Because I would like to meet him. I mean,
Yeah.
because right now the only signs that I see are exactly where previous signs have been. And they're predictable where they are. And I want to know who he is and what he represents and what his background is. And because I don't know him. I don't know him from Adam. And it would be nice to know who he is. But I think in light of that and not knowing, I do know you.
Yeah.
And I do know where you're coming from. And I'm sure if I disagree with you on something that we could talk about it. And I think that's the biggest thing. Honestly, it's the biggest thing for me is to be able to communicate.
Yeah. Yeah. You
I
know,
would
and
agree.
so let's see. What other hot topic items?
The building committee. What's your stand on the building committee? I mean, this is a hot topic.
Oh, I feel like I could talk for way too long on this.
Well,
The building committee. I don't agree with the way the building committee has been treated at all. Whether it was malicious intent or not, that treatment came across bad and offended many people on the committee, the sitting committee. Words matter, and how they come across matters.
Words matter.
Yeah, Brimfield
It's
matter.
true.
Words matter.
Words do matter.
And I can see how the building committee would now feel like there's a target on their back. Scared me.
Sorry.
I just think that if there was an issue with the board or committee,
Checking my back for the target.
Yeah, right. There's one there. Rest assured.
Perhaps discuss it out of the public eye before you bring it to the open session, to the open meeting. I don't know. It seems like it was just over minutes. And to me, that was an easy answer. Just get the minutes. But it graduated into this thing that no, we're going to dissolve the whole building committee because they can't keep minutes, which they were keeping minutes. It's just they weren't posting them. So it's not like the minutes didn't exist. Granted, they weren't kept properly, which they've admitted to and have decided to take action to fix.
Right.
But among other boards.
Right. Yes, it wasn't just them. And that was my biggest thing is if you're going to say to one committee, I want to see all your meeting minutes. I don't see them here. You need to show them to me now. Then you should be saying that to all your boards and committees across the whole town.
Right.
Not just one. Because now that they have no choice but to feel targeted because they're the only one getting targeted for their minutes.
Right.
And it's just off to me that, they would just dissolve the whole board to reform the board. It doesn't seem right to me on several levels, but I think that's the wrong course of action. Like if you want to add people to the board and they've said, yes, we're open to adding people to the board, then add people to the board or committee. Sorry. But I just think,
agrees.
Yeah, he said yes too.
Yeah.
But I just think it just was poorly handled, honestly, unfortunately, and it's caused more rift.
Really
it's just
really has. Across the town. Now,
unfortunately,
all this board has done is divide the town.
Yeah.
It's
a shame.
And unfortunately, the building committee there's a lot of people, both department heads and members of other other committees and boards.
Oh, you're running away.
Yeah. It's fading
into the background.
No, I agree. It's a very eclectic group, and it's and I do think that I know one of the things was, what do you think about department heads being on such a committee? What's your feel on that?
I don't think there's ethically anything wrong with it if they're not, if there's not a direct impact. If it's a building committee and they don't have a direct impact on funding that they're receiving or giving, I don't really see an issue with that. But I would have to go through the ethics training. I haven't gone through the ethics training to know for sure. But to me, if someone volunteers for the board and there's no ethical conflict, then it's fine. I could see like where someone on a committee can't be on the board of selectmen, or like the police members can't be on a committee because they're also hired by the board of selectmen.
Yeah.
That's a conflict of interest.
If you're getting money directly, there's that you have to kind of be careful with that.
It's impacting the funding directly, whereas the department heads don't have an impact on the funding really.
Exactly.
It's
just it's right.
And there are mechanisms. You know, just to be clear for anybody out there,
right?
We did have a police officer on the select board, and he filed a bunch of disclosures that made it legal. He never discussed the finance budget of the police,
right,
which was required, and
he had to take. He could only take one stipend. He could only take one monetary pay, and so he didn't take anything from the stipend.
But did they pass the bylaw that changed it so that they couldn't? I know that
was
okay.
No, they didn't, because I mean that was something that would have impacted a number of employees.
It would have made it so that like Mr. Paul Vandal, who's a volunteer firefighter,
he couldn't serve on the ZBA.
He wouldn't have been able to. He served on the select board too. He was. He was in there. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. You know, so you get really good people that have a heart in the town, and when they want to participate.
Highway surveyor.
Right, like the highway surveyor. He's helping everywhere. You know, I mean, and for him on the building committee, it's outstanding.
And he's a fireman.
And he's a firefighter. And so it's like, God, it's a small town, and people will sometimes wear multiple hats.
Yeah.
And look at Chief. I mean, Chief is everywhere. You know, Chief of Police is everywhere. You know, and Dawn being on again.
Chief Contours.
I'm sorry, Fire Chief Contours. They do. I mean, they participate, and I agree. When you have that committee of 11, and if they saw a department trying to get, I want office space, and I want an AC, they're gonna look at it like, but no, the way that worked, everybody gave up and said, no, you should have that based on discussion. It was impressive. I have to say, the way they worked was impressive.
So you brought up the police chief.
Oh boy.
What's your feeling on the police chief? And more importantly, I would like to know, and I'd like to know this from everybody on the board, you know, we're now going to be getting a new police chief. You know, what are you going to be looking for the next police chief?
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Oh, someone like Chief Cuss. Can I say that?
You can.
But why would you?
In what regard?
Just kidding.
So
in what regard?
I think seeing his dedication to the town, he goes above and beyond for the town all the time. I mean, he worked the last flea market without getting paid, because he knew he knew the town needed it, and so he was there, even though there was this question about the pay, which they still didn't sign off on. Anyways, so he might have worked this last flea market without pay too. I don't know the answer to that, but
I hope not. I think that's totally wrong, but that's a different discussion, and I'll have that another day.
So I think that seeing that dedication to the town is a big deal, but also bringing in experience. I think having some experience in other police departments is a huge benefit for the town if we can get somebody that has the kind of background that he had coming in, where he had worked in several police departments and knew his stuff before coming in, and then grew his knowledge too, clearly. So I think that's another aspect of it. You know, looking at the background and seeing what experience they have, and hopefully we can find someone that lives in town to take the job, but maybe not, because we don't have, I don't know if the lieutenant is putting in for it.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah.
We don't even have the job description publicly yet.
I thought they were publishing.
I don't think it's up. Is it out? I don't think it's out yet.
It is out. I asked for a copy of it.
It's not posted though, is it?
No.
Okay.
Actually, maybe we should post that out on Brimfield Matters Facebook page,
What's that?
the job description, because we do have it. The interesting
the
part
new
is,
one? The
yeah,
newest
the
one?
new one.
Oh, I didn't even know they approved it
Where-
yet. Did they
yeah.
approve it?
Where is
Did
it?
I miss it?
They approved it at the last meeting, and I did a public records request,
Oh, nice.
and I wanted to read a copy of it.
Oh yeah, I do know you asking.
The current chief and the lieutenant, or neither the current chief, the lieutenant, or any police officer reviewed it. There's no mention whatsoever of the flea market on the job description. And
That's
it's
a big thing to cover.
That's a big thing that the second day of the job. Oh, by the way,
Here's this flea market.
There's a flea market. There's some information here that you might want to know.
There's like
But-
25,000 people
You
that's
know,
going to be in
yeah.
town. Here you go.
So you might want to talk with Sean and
yeah,
Get
they,
that figured out.
but don't forget, they approved the position of the fire chief to work it, and
But-
they rejected the police chief
Yeah.
from working it. So
Well,
maybe
from
their plan
assigning-
is
Well-
to assigning
never
his own
have-
hours.
right
to
from
work.
assigning his own hours to actually having hours on a schedule.
Yeah.
That
So
kind
he
of
can,
limits him. But
he can
effectively,
work it during his regular duty
Right.
hours.
Well-
technically.
Well, but no, it's a detail. It gets
Oh, it's billed as a detail.
it's
Yes.
billed as a detail, so it's not regular hours.
right.
Well, then,
And because it is a detail.
So this is another hot
Oh,
seat
man.
question.
Sorry, you
Jeez.
need some water. You need a
I
break.
know.
Yeah.
I'm over here sweating.
Yeah.
So we've mentioned it a few times.
Oh.
What are your thoughts on the flea market?
Oh, the flea market. So, I myself, despite what everybody might think, I do like the flea market. I actually go to the flea market. Some of you may have seen me down at the flea market. However, from an emergency management standpoint, I don't go into the fields. So, because that terrifies me with the emergency management background and knowing how congested in those fields go. We 100% stick to the outskirts of the fields.
Interesting.
So I apologize for all the vendors that are inside the fields. But just from the emergency management perspective, if something did happen, there's no way emergency services is getting in there. So that's just me. But I do like the flea market. It's a benefit for the town. It's a huge benefit for the town. There's a lot of businesses in town that benefit from it. The church, the Hitchcock Center, personal residences benefit from it because they're parking people too, and they get that income. So I think that it brings a lot to the town. I just think that along with that, our bylaws are antiquated. They're very old, and they should be looked at. I think we need to come together and have some frank discussions regarding safety during the flea market, police details during the flea market. I think it's fair that the police get paid the higher detail rate for the flea market. I think that's fair to the police that are working, and that then allows us to bring in more police from outside because they're going to be willing to come and work the detail if it's at the comparable rate. So that will actually help in the long run with traffic control, all that sort of stuff, because we all know how backed up it gets down there. So I just think that there's a lot that we can talk about and work towards. And there's always, like I said before, there's always room for improvement. But I just think that those bylaws have been on the books for so long, and some of them are crazy. When you look at them, you're like, what?
Yeah, amended 1977.
Yeah, like you're like, what?
Okay, what
So,
happened?
Right. So I think that that's a big thing that needs to be done. Like looking at the bylaws, working with the flea market advisory committee to find out, what we can do to help both sides.
Yeah.
What can we do to make this good for both sides and make everybody happy?
And break down the sides. So it's what can we do to make Brimfield better?
Yes.
Right.
Because maybe
right.
there's things that could make it better for some people in town. But for me, the biggest thing is always safety. I feel like there's the safety of it needs to be looked at. I think there's a lot of variables going on down there. And again, it's the emergency management in me. Yeah, there's a lot. And I know nothing's ever happened, or there's only minor things that happen. But you just never know. And I think being ready doesn't hurt anything ever.
Right.
So
Yeah.
just like
Very good.
having a go bag in your house.
Yeah, no, I agree. You got to have plan B.
Just in case.
Amen.
I thought it was a shame that the bylaws that were written that you were involved in that.
Yes, that was a big learning experience. I will admit to that. That was a big learning experience. I think there needs to be more time spent when writing the bylaws and getting more people involved.
Right.
And that was on us 100%. And we're new to this too.
What would you do differently?
I think differently would be getting with more people on it
Earlier.
Yeah. It just like the deadline came up so fast.
People don't think about it.
No.
Right now things are going on.
Yeah.
Then January 1st comes. Oh, by the way, everything's got to be in by
Yeah.
March. It's like, wait.
Yes.
And then it seems like it's rushed, and it is rushed.
And it's rushed.
Because this is something that takes a lot of input and the right input.
Yeah. And I think getting with, bringing in the police chief, the fire chief, the emergency management director, and the flea market people, because that's part of their livelihood is these fields and the flea market. So, having their input is important. So I learned that in the bylaws and
I thought, there was some bad communication between the select board and the flea market advisory committee. And, it was a shame. In past years, we would have brought the flea market advisory committee in. We did on different topics to help discuss these things and to flesh them out. And I mean, I talked early on with the chairman, and he had some good ideas that could have been had our board. The way that the flea market advisory committee works is that they don't do anything until the select board asks them to.
Right.
And the select board never asked them to look at these bylaws, which had they been able to do that, had they had an open meeting about it, we could have sat down like we have in past years, and it only stopped, 2 years ago.
Right. Agreed.
But and again, I feel like it's because the walls are up.
Yeah.
And there's just
I
don't know what happened to have it go that hard and fast that it just was nope, we're done. We don't want to talk to anybody on either side.
Right. It's a shame because, I think those bylaws that you wrote could have been tweaked to make it good for both sides. But because those walls have been put up in 2 years, there was no willingness at all.
Right. That should have gone to the bylaw committee and asked the flea market advisory committee to help them because it was a bylaw.
Yeah.
And then ask them both to get together and see if they couldn't have a group discussion with both of those committees because it would have made sense. And then I agree.
But we were told that it wasn't what the flea market advisory committee did.
No, you're right.
We asked the question.
You're right. It isn't. I mean, it is. And then they have to be asked to look at something and then they advise, and I suppose they're supposed to advise us, not us being at the time, the select board rather than advise the bylaw committee. But the reality is they could still have a meeting.
I'd like a joint.
And then bring that advisory council to the select board. It isn't that hard. It's hard to kind of get people together, and then work is hard, but the protocol is not hard. It really isn't. And yes, I agree. The wording, I think things could have been tweaked enough to get the intent maybe looked at. And even if it wasn't, all right, well, maybe we really need to work it. It's never going to make this warrant. This is the good foundation work for the next year. That's the only trouble with this, the way this rural town, you get the town meeting once a year, which honestly is a whole new, that's why Sturbridge has 2 town meetings scheduled a year, but just for this kind of a thing, because enough things come up between that you want to get them done. And so I think, but anyway, but yeah, I do think that was a mistake and that could be fixed.
Yeah. So we're at the time that we usually end. I don't know if there's any other pressing questions, if there's any questions from the crowd.
Let's see.
There's,
Someone said to notify the town clerk. I did see that, so thank you. I will do that.
I snuck it over here too.
Oh, look, you can read it here.
Oh, cheater.
Yeah,
Put
so
my
I'll
spectacles on.
contact the town clerk and let them know to be on the lookout.
Yeah, and then that way they know what the print is supposed to say. So again, if
Yeah.
the intent is right, I mean, if
Yeah.
a 90-year-old person's in there
Right.
and they're scribbling and the intent is right, they should have the wherewithal to say that's what it is, or try to decipher what it is.
And once again, if you're interested in voting for Ms. Harry,
Ms. Harry.
it would be Crystal Harry,
Protocol.
212 East Hill Road, and you got to put all that information
Yes.
on
Right.
Please.
on the ballot.
Right.
So, without any more questions, do you have any closing thoughts?
I can't read that last. Someone's wrote something else.
Oh, I missed it.
Oh, maybe have Crystal write a post. Okay, yeah, summarize what I went over tonight. Maybe that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know what to close with.
Well,
I mean, I'm here.
So you could,
there you go.
we could close. We were also told at the end of last meeting that we have to come up with something, a tagline like, what was it that the anchor man always said?
No, I'm not doing it. Something about San Diego. No, I'm not doing that. Just
But
read what's on
we
the
could say,
scroll. I'm not.
No.
No.
He said stay classy.
Stay classy.
Stay classy, San
Yeah.
Diego.
So,
Yeah. All
so
right.
we could do, we were thinking something about Brimfield Matters. So you can tie in your closing. You want to run for selectman? Why?
Because Brimfield matters.
There you go.
Hey.
All right.
With
Thanks,
that,
everybody.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oop, I got to close the stream.
I gotta close this one.
And